Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Oh, Tony, it is part 2 of our long over-under podcast. If we set a line for the runtime of this podcast, I hope you bet the over, because we ended up going for well over an hour. So this is part 2 of our conversation. At the time we started, the next thing you're going to hear is going to be Tony talking. And at the time, we didn't know this was going to be part 2. So get ready. Hope you like awkward transitions, because you're going to get one in 3, 2, 1, awkward.
Let's move to the defensive side of the ball here now, because I took all of these numbers. The average sack leader for Ohio State over the last decade, and these all worked out pretty well, because I didn't have to create these numbers. It was roughly 8.5. And so to me, that is a really good number. And this is, again, over the course of a season. And it is pretty bizarre that at Ohio State, you've only had 2 players in the last decade post more than 8.5 sacks. So for that reason alone, I'm taking the under there, because and I'll tell you who the 2 players are, it's Joey Bosa and Chase Young. So, and Nick Bosa had 8.5. So if Nick Bosa can't get 9, I'm not going to ask or expect anybody else to. Especially considering last year, JT Tuimoloau only had 4, and that's the first guy you're going to think of. And Mike Hall and Jack Sawyer both had 4.5. So you're asking them to double what they did. Now, I do think that's possible, but just based on history, I'm going to have to take the under.
I'm going to take the under here as well. I mean, you mentioned last year's stats. 2 years ago, the leader was Haskell Garrett, 5.5. Tyleik Williams had 5. Zach Harrison had 4. It just, the way they talk about stats and approaching, how they're going to measure success this year. They talk about the fact that this is not one guy gets the sack, it's the line gets the sack. And with the way Larry Johnson rotates guys, with the way that I think, this is a little bit like the Marvin Harrison conversation, where JT Tuimoloau, you are not the only person who has heard of JT Tuimoloau. Allow me to assure you, Penn State is going to be paying attention to JT Tuimoloau this season. That's probably going to open things up for other players. So I think the sacks, I think there's a decent chance you've got 5 guys with 5 or more sacks this year. Maybe a better chance of that than there being one guy with 10 sacks or 9 sacks this year. It just feels like it's probably going to get spread out a decent amount between Tuimoloau and Sawyer and Kenyatta Jackson and Mike Hall and Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton and Caden Curry. I mean, it's going to get spread around enough that I don't think you're going to have any one guy that has the Chase Young kind of season.
The last 3 years, the leading sackers have combined, if you take 2022, 2021, and 24, 13.5 sacks. Chase Young, of course, 16.5 in 2019, just as a comparison. So let's move to tackles for loss, because that number includes players like Tommy Eichenberg's 12 last year. You've got some Chase Youngs in there. You've got some Joey Bosa's, some Nick Bosa's, and especially some Ryan Shazier's back in with his 23.5 tackles for loss in 2013. But the average season is 14.5. How you feeling about that one, Tom?
14.5 seems real doable for Tommy Eichenberg, because he had 12 last year in 13 games. Assuming they get to 14 games this year, you're just about on pace to get there. I think he's going to have a pretty darn good season this year. I don't think this is an easy over for me, but I think it might be close enough that it's honestly kind of a stay away if you were actually going to bet on it. But over is a more fun thing to say, so I'll say over, but this really feels more like a coin flip than just about anything else here.
Yeah, I like the over for Tommy Eichenberg as well. Just looking at past years, like I said, he had 12 last year. The leader in 2021, Haskell Garrett and Zach Harrison, had 7. Justin Hilliard in 2020, obviously a shortened year, he had 5. But if you're looking, like, generally every year before then, say for 2016, where Tyquan Lewis had 10.5, they were getting over 15, over 14.5 tackles for loss. But again, Those were Chase Young's, Bosa's, and Shazier's. So am I saying Tommy Eichenberg is in that group? Of course that's what I'm saying. So congratulations. Welcome to the Ring of Honor. Tackles, Tom. This worked out. This is an interesting number that it came out to, because over the last 10 years, the average tackle leader has posted 99 tackles. So basically we're asking here, is there going to be a triple digit tackler? And based on the return of Tommy Eichenberg and his 120 tackles from last year, this seems like an easy one, because it's been the 5 years prior to Eichenberg that really skewed the numbers, where nobody had over 100 tackles. And the 2020, of course, skews all of the numbers. But even in 2019, Malik Harrison, 75 tackles, led the team. 2017, Jerome Baker's 72 tackles, led the team. I think, Tom, it's because Greg Schiano's defenses, they tackled the ball. They got off the field in 3 and outs.
Is that how you remember that going? I don't think that's how. Either way, let's not dwell in the past. You look at Tommy, if you need 100 tackles and you're playing 14 games, that works out to like 7 tackles a game, basically. It's 7 and a little change. Last year, he had 7 tackles, Tommy Eichenberg did, against everyone except for Arkansas State and Toledo, and that was just because he didn't play probably in the second halves of the game. 9 against Notre Dame, 14 against Wisconsin, 9 against Rutgers, 8 against Michigan State, 7 against Iowa, 15 against Penn State, 13 against Northwestern, 7 against Indiana, 13 against Maryland, 7 against Michigan, 8 against Georgia. I mean, it's not like there's the one game where he has the Chris Spielman 29 tackles. He's just constantly around the ball. He's constantly making plays. He's doing it against teams that run the ball a lot. He's doing it against, the reason I looked up his game log was because I thought, I wonder if this is, he had 74 tackles against Iowa because they couldn't get the ball more than 3 yards down the field. And no, it was just kind of spread throughout the season. So yeah, I think that's maybe the easiest over we've had so far. If Tommy Eichenberg is healthy, Tommy Eichenberg is going over 100 tackles this year. Even
if he's not, as long as he has 3 fingers on both hands combined that he can work with, he will be out there. That way he can just, signal in plays. It's like it's either play 1, 2, or 3. That's we've got to cut down the playbook, because that's the only number of fingers he has left.
He did it with both thumbs tied behind his back last year, so clearly he can do it this year.
Wrap up, you idiot. I can't. Average interception leader the last decade. And this is a tale of 2 half decades, just so we're aware, because from 2013 to 2017, the average interception leader had 5 interceptions for the Buckeyes. The 5 years since, that number is down to 2.5, which puts this number at 3.5. And it's been since 2017 since an Ohio State Buckeye has had more than 3 interceptions. That was Damon Webb. Then, of course, 2016, obviously Malik Hooker with his 7. So those two had 12 interceptions in a 2-year span. And in the 5 years since, the Buckeyes have had 13. So I know they're talking about how they're getting their hands on more balls. They are more comfortable with this defense. Everything sounds good. And Tom, I think it is time for more than 3 interceptions from somebody. And is that somebody? I don't know who it is, because now if you're talking about rotating all of these safeties, that's gonna cut into the number. Is it going to be somebody like Jordan Hancock, who will be playing outside and perhaps nickel and have some more opportunities? Because if you're a lockdown corner, I don't see a lot of passes coming your way. Is it somebody like Davison Igbinosun, who the Big Ten maybe doesn't know about, and so he gets a couple here and there? And is it going to require somebody to get 2 interceptions in a game, perhaps something like that? And now you're halfway there. Still, this is a gamble. This is one where you're like, I don't expect to hit. But and is that really the best way to do bet over-unders? Honestly, this is not a long shot that you're taking. Yeah, you know what? It's like, no, this is just a 50-50 shot. You don't need to, there are no extra odds for this, but I feel like they're due to go over.
They are due. That's why Tony's betting all of the overs on Iowa's offense this fall. They're due, baby. They are due. Do you know how many interceptions Ohio State cornerbacks have made in the last 2 seasons combined?
Is it 1?
You're such a hater. Half. half of what you picked half of what it was, Tony. God, disgraceful. Two. Denzel Burke had one in 2021, and Cameron Brown had one in 2021, and none last year. That was in honor of Bill Willis. 0 interceptions last year. I am in the okay. Let's see it. Like I'm going to need to see it this year. I don't think it's a corner that probably does it. I think it's probably, if someone goes over, it's probably a safety. But I'm going to need to see it just because it hasn't happened for so long. And I mean, you went through the numbers, and you think back to Malik Hooker, and that doesn't feel like that long ago. But then one player with 7 interceptions and 3 pick sixes in one season, that feels impossibly long ago. So. Yeah, I'm going to go under on this one for Ohio State. And, maybe they do. Maybe they really are getting more hands-on passes, and you get a bunch of deflections or a bunch of picks. But I'm going to need to see it before I believe it.
Have you forgotten about a certain Thorpe Award candidate by the name of JT Tuimoloau?
Yes, he was on pace. If he had played the whole season at Penn State, he would have had 24 interceptions in the regular season. Would not have gotten to go against Sean Clifford if he was playing for Penn State. So it's a small problem there. But yeah, Ohio State defensive ends out-intercepted Ohio State cornerbacks last year, and I think they might have the year before that too. Let me just look real quick.
They've certainly won the aggregate. We'll say that.
Yeah. I think I think it's been kind of even over the last couple of years. But, there was a couple of years before that, Haskell Garrett had, I think, 2 interceptions. Like a nose tackle had as many interceptions in one season as they had, as a cornerback unit the last 2 seasons combined. So, that's one of those things that is probably going to change. I would not necessarily bet on regression to the mean there until I see it, but, maybe we'll see.
So those are all the self-produced over-unders for everybody. The rest are listener-produced. You'll be able to tell the difference in quality will rise so much more now. And we can go through these in a quicker manner, perhaps, than we have been. This one first from at Xalexan. And Tom, I'll just let you have this one. 3.5 cot sleeps for Tony.
Well, we got to approach this really scientifically because Ohio State has
no, we don't.
6 road games during the conference season. And then are we assuming, they could have 3 potential road games after that. So you could have as many as 9. Tony, I don't remember. How did we, I don't remember who has the cot the first week. That's, that would be really good information here. Feels like I should have a head start on this, and I don't know. So we'll call that 50-50 until we figure that out. I'm going to say over here because you got the 5 conference road games. You've got the Notre Dame game. That's 6. You could have as many as 9, even if it's just 8. Odds are it's probably, he's probably on there at least 4 times this year. So I'm gonna say over.
Well, shoot, there's going to be some 2-nighters at some places. So that's good. That could double it up right there. That's 2. We're going to be, any kind of road trip is going to be a week almost. So it's going to be really difficult for me to get under this. I will have the fortitude to attempt to, but it would require me to win 11 of the 12 weeks. And I'd have to win the right weeks, especially because this is one of those things where it's like the money ball of the 12th game or the 13th game or whatever could really, really ruin things. I could be 12-0 and have no cot sleeps. And then boom, one bad game by the Ohio State football players, not by me, by them. And boom, six cot sleeps right there.
Well, see, I think we have to define this as trips and not actual nights, because otherwise, just the bowl game would put you over on that. So yeah, I think we'll define it as trips and not nights. But I'm still going over, but not nearly as easily as I would have if it was just nights.
We've got a bunch of good ones here from @fun_magnets. And Tom, you may have already gone over on this one. I think we talked about this in the. No, this is a kind of a different one. But the 1.5 quarterbacks getting meaningful playing time at Notre Dame. I'm taking the under. By game 4, they know who they got. They know what they want. You can't have somebody looking over their shoulder. at that point. And I think, as Ryan Day has said, somebody always emerges after a few games, if not before then. So I think that guy will have emerged. They'll have enough time under the belt at that point to be the man. And you want to give them all of the confidence in the world to go out there, and you can make a mistake. Don't worry about it. Just come back out there the next time and be straight. So I'm going under on that one.
Yeah, I would agree there. If you go back about 15, 20 minutes when I was talking about all the games where I thought the backup was going to get meaningful playing time, did not talk about Notre Dame there. I think they are well aware of the fact that they don't want this to turn into a circus and just rotating quarterbacks and, like the Steve Spurrier, like pulling guys in the middle of a drive and throwing the other guy in. Like, you don't want that. That screws with it messes with the vibes, Tony. And it just sort of screws with the getting everyone being in a rhythm and all that kind of stuff. And you get guys looking over their shoulder. That is no bueno. They do not want to do that. So yeah, I think by the time you get to Notre Dame, you're probably looking at that being one guy, as long as that starter stays healthy and, doesn't throw 3 picks in the first quarter or something like that, you're going to be under on that one, I think.
The next one, Tom, is the over-under is 0.5 punt return touchdowns. What do you got? It's time, Tom. It is time.
It is time. When is the last time Ohio State returned a punt for a touchdown? I know the kickoff was the 2010 Michigan game, but when was the last punt?
Was it the Jalen Marshall?
It might have been Jalen Marshall against Indiana in 2014. I think that might be right. I don't remember any since then. So I'm going to go under. This is another kind of show me thing where they have approached punts as catch the ball. And if you get something else out of it, great, but catch the ball because the level of confidence in the offense is such that you just don't want to cost a possession. So catch the ball and don't worry about trying to get the extra 5 yards because the offense will handle that. Maybe there's a little less confidence in the offense this year with the quarterback and the offensive line, maybe, but I still don't see a real significant shift there. And, I think we're seeing kind of the same guys back there that we have seen back there. So I'm going to say under.
Yeah, I'm going to say under as well, especially if Emeka Egbuka is your number one punt returner. You just want him to catch the ball, and you don't want to put him at any other risk other than the risk you're already putting him out there for. Next one is 199.5 carries for TreVeyon Henderson, which over the course of, as I'm saying, 14 games, that's 14, 15 carries a game. That's a tough one. He was well under that as a freshman, if I recall, like 170 some. And there's no reason for him to be over 200 carries unless he's really, really effective. And I do think he will be really, really effective. So as I was looking at this before I just started talking myself out of it, I felt pretty okay about taking the over. But it's surprising how little a running back actually has more than 14 carries in Ohio State's offense. But they may need to do it more this year. I'm going to go under. Under, Tom. Under's the number.
Under is the number. I think you're going to... They might run him like they used to run J.T. Barrett, where you have, against Youngstown State, you got 8 to 10 carries. And then when it's Michigan, you might have 18 to 20 or Penn State or someone like that. I don't see them riding him so heavily like Michigan ran Blake Corum last year. I mean, just to put this in context, Blake Corum last year, we just talked about this, 247 carries in 12 games last year. That's why people talk about how hard Michigan was riding him last year. I don't think Ohio State needs to do that. I don't think Ohio State's going to do that. You've got Mayan Williams, you've got Chip Trayanum, you've got Dallin Hayden, you've got Evan Pryor, you've got all these other options, and they're going to be throwing the ball a whole bunch. So they're going to be, if it's a game where they're way ahead, you're going to want to get the other guys carries, and you're going to want to keep TreVeyon Henderson healthy and fresh, because a healthy and fresh TreVeyon Henderson completely changes the game for Ohio State late in the season. So yeah, I'm going to go under on that one.
But you just look at the past, and it seems like that should be an easy number to hit. But recently, it's been questionable. The next one is 36.5 receptions for Cade Stover, which is basically asking, is he going to have one more catch than he did last year? And last year, you had obviously C.J. Stroud. Now this year, will you have a quarterback that is looking at the tight ends as like a safety valve, as they talk about with the young quarterbacks? Will that be where does Cade Stover become somebody that, rather than looking for your third read, you're just like, well, first two aren't there. Where's Cade? I just need to dump it off to Cade. And does he pick up a bunch of numbers that way? Given how little the tight ends have been used, to the tune of 36 catches over the last 140 years at Ohio State, I'm going to go under again, also because of the receiver depth as well and the new quarterback.
Yeah, you got the receiver depth. You've got running back depth as well, where they didn't throw a ton to the running backs last year. I think it was 5 catches for Mayan Williams, 4 for Dallin Hayden, 4 for TreVeyon Henderson. You got Evan Pryor coming back this year. I think you're going to have, you probably will see some check down, and this kind of goes back to the risk aversion and the not wanting to throw interceptions thing that I talked about earlier. You're probably going to see a few more check downs this year with guys maybe being a little more skittish about, am I going to lose my job if I make the big mistake at some point? So you're going to see more check downs, but I think those are going to be spread around to the running backs a little more. So yeah, when in doubt, bet against the Ohio State tight end going over whatever the number is. That's just sort of how it has worked out for the last ever. So, since John Frank, bet the under has basically been the rule of thumb with Ohio State tight ends, and so I'm gonna play it smart and do that again here.
You say that, but I bet the over on Fred Puckett Sr. back in 1968. I said the over under was like 8.5. I'm like, I feel pretty good about that, and he finished with 9. So led the team that year around then. This one, Tom, I'm going to let you take this one because it's a magical number for a number of reasons. 29.5 receptions for Carnell Tate. And we talked on a morning show a couple days ago about what Marvin Harrison had to say about him. We know that over the course of history throughout Ohio State, there have been 3 wide receivers who have ever topped 30 receptions as true freshmen at Ohio State. That list is Garrett Wilson, David Boston, and Chris Carter. Tom, will there be a 4th?
I'm going to say no. And the reason is you go back the last couple of years, and the 4th highest number of receptions on the team for Ohio State, 27 when TreVeyon Henderson in 2021. Jeremy Ruckert had 26 that year. Last year, the 4th highest was Julian Fleming at 34. But then behind that, it was Xavier Johnson at 13. The 4th highest wide receiver doesn't generally end up that high up. It feels like he could get there, and the only thing, I'm sort of talking myself out of saying under now because I'm thinking, boy, if he's playing in the second half and they're trying to get the backup quarterback more meaningful game reps, and you're not just bringing him in and handing off, then maybe you're throwing more, and maybe you do. This feels like it's more of a question of, does Carnell Tate take over as a starting wide receiver at some point, and if so, when? Or does he win at least a significant rotational role? Because I don't think he starts as one of the top 4. I think Xavier Johnson is kind of the 4th guy in there probably to start the season, but boy, I'm going to say under, but I'm going to do it because I'm trying to be responsible to counteract Marvin Harrison's reckless proclamations about where Carnell Tate is at this time in his career.
And it is nice that you're being responsible. The day after Harrison said that, I wrote a column saying, hey, let's all be responsible about these expectations now, and let's not go overboard. Because if you take that 30 that I said, you just cut it in half, the number of freshman wide receivers who have had 15 receptions as true freshmen, it now includes Ted Ginn Jr. And then it's the other 3 that we already mentioned. So you're talking Ted Ginn Jr., Garrett Wilson, David Boston, Chris Carter, with at least 15 catches as true freshmen. That's it. In terms of wide receivers, Dontre Wilson, TreVeyon Henderson, they made that number. But this is, if Carnell Tate, I'm going to take the under as well. And I'll say if he hits the over, that to me might be a Marvin Harrison Rose Bowl situation where you have not made the playoffs and you've got Emeka sitting out and you've got Marvin Harrison sitting out. And now Carnell Tate just picks up, he goes into that game with like 25 catches and he comes out with 35 catches, that sort of thing, something like that. I do, Tom, if I say, will he add to the 25 club? I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, I think I could see them getting to 25. I don't think that's quite as crazy. But, I think also let's keep in mind Marvin Harrison as a true freshman. Everyone remembers 3 touchdowns in the Rose Bowl and goes, wow, he had an incredible freshman season. 11 catches, 139 yards, 3 touchdowns. You remember the 3 touchdowns. You remember all 3 of them, where they happened and when they happened. Before that, 0 touchdowns for Marvin Harrison. I think he had 6 catches in that game. So he came into that game with like maybe 5 catches for 50 yards or something along those lines. It is asking a lot for a true freshman, even if it is literally Marvin Harrison Jr. to come in and play. And they've got 3 real good wide receivers. That year, it was Jackson Smith-Njigba, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave. This year, it's you've got Marvin Harrison, you've got Emeka Egbuka, you've got Julian Fleming. It feels like it's asking a lot for a true freshman to be an impact player so early that you have time to pile those stats up. Chris Olave wasn't on that list, or he was. No, did you say he was on that list? No, he wasn't. Because he came in. Yeah, he came in, and it was like the Michigan State game, give or take, sort of like end of October, early November, where you sort of started to see him a little bit more. It's so hard to get on the field, and this is not you're walking into the Iowa wide receiver room or the Michigan State wide receiver room. This is a very, very difficult place to get on the field. I think he might get close because they're throwing the ball more in the second half and you're working the backup quarterback more and all that kind of stuff. Plus, he's just an absolutely incredible player. But this is one where I think people in general heard that Marvin Harrison quote and went, easy over, and I don't think it's an easy over.
No, just some interesting names for you. Deron Carter had more catches as a true freshman than Marvin Harrison. He had 13. As you said, Harrison had 11. Dane Sanzenbacher had 12 as a true freshman in 2007. More than Marvin, more than DeVere Posey, more than Jackson Smith-Njigba, more than Emeka Egbuka, more than Ray Small, more than Lamar Thomas, more than Torian Washington. Okay?
I mean, I don't know how many faces you want to put on this modified Mount Rushmore, but all of them belong up there, 100%.
And we could probably start speeding through these, Tom. But here's a very interesting one because it's 1.5 starts for Luke Montgomery. And I like the 1.5 number because it takes out the spot start. So this is more than just a spot start. This is either it's 2 spot starts in terms of you are now that established or you've taken a job. But that being said, I think things are pretty set in terms of where guys are. And I'm not entirely convinced Luke Montgomery is the number 3 tackle. I need to see that first, that he isn't the number 3 over Tagovailoa. So for that reason, I would take the under on that.
I'm going under on that one as well. That just feels like it's asking so much for a true freshman to be starting on the offensive line. And I am with you. I think Tagovailoa is probably the 3rd tackle right now. So if you had someone go down, I don't know that he's necessarily the first guy off the bench. So, and I don't really see him surpassing Josh Fryer this year and just earning it on merit. That's just not a reasonable expectation for a true freshman. So I think under, and if it does go over, that's probably not great news for Ohio State because that probably involves 1 or more kind of significant injuries on the offensive line, which is not something they really want this year.
Next one is 23.5 touchdown reception between Marvin and Emeka. This is over the course of a season. So they had 24 last year, 14 for Marvin, 10 for Emeka. So can they do that again this year? New quarterback. I think when we talk about vultures with the running backs, let's not forget about the vulture that is Julian Fleming, who had, as I've said many times, I'm the only person that says this. Nobody else says it. I say it the best. He missed the first 2 games last year, but then had 6 touchdown catches in the 5 games that he was most healthy. In his first 5 games, 6 touchdowns. So I feel like even though I think we did the overs on the individually, together, 24 touchdowns seems like a lot again this year, but I could also see somebody having 16 and somebody else having, 9 or 10. We see both of them having 10, but I'm still taking the under for a number of reasons.
Yeah, if this is 21 and a half, I'd probably go over because I think one of them gets to 14, but I don't know that, I think the other one might not get to 10. And there's just, how many touchdowns are they going to throw this season? I mean, it's been basically like in the low to mid 40s the last couple of years. I think that ball's getting spread around a decent amount, and Cade Stover gets 5 of those, and Julian Fleming gets some. And of course, as you just recently said, Carnell Tate probably 17, 18 touchdowns, which I thought was pretty irresponsible. But I mean, I can't speak for you. It feels like it might be under that number. Not by a lot, but under, even though I think they're both having a good year.
I would stay away from that one. 0.5 made field goals of 50 plus yards. Tom, we don't even know who the kicker is. So to be even talking about them actually kicking any field goals this year is incredibly premature. Generally, you need, I don't know what the number is in terms of what Ohio State has had each year. At Ohio State, a 50-yard field goal, one a year, should be like, yeah, that's an easy bet. But I have no idea if either of these guys, Jaden Fielding or Parker Lewis, are going to be able to do that. And if Ryan Day is even going to push them for that. So I'm going to go under.
Tony, do you remember the last time Ohio State attempted a 50-yard field goal?
It wasn't last year. Was it this year?
It was. I think the kick may have been taken last year, but the ball didn't land until this year. Yeah, it's Ohio State just doesn't kick 50-yard field goals. Yeah, Ohio State does not kick field goals very often that are 50 yards or more. I think the last made one was by Blake Hallbeal against Northwestern, and that was at the gun at halftime, and it was that was like a 53 or 55 yard or something like that. But that was there's 2 seconds left until halftime, so what the heck? Why not? Ryan Day has really kind of eschewed the 50-yard field goal outside of like really unusual situations, because if it's 3rd and 7 and you're kind of in this is a little too long of a field goal, he will generally just go for it. And with the offense being as efficient as it has been, that's probably the smart decision more often than not. So yeah, I'm going to say under on this one, just because they only tried it twice last year, went 0 for 2. They missed one against Penn State as well from 53. I think that might have also been a halftime situation, maybe, but it's it's just something that Ryan Day has just not done very much.
This next one, Tom, as I get back to it,
3.5 regular season losses between Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. You've got they're each going to play each other. So you've got 3 there. So this question is just, will Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State lose a game in the regular season other than to that group of teams? So that cohort is going to lose 3 games just because they are playing each other 3 times. Will they lose another game? Tony, what is my philosophy on betting on teams to go undefeated during a regular season?
Well, technically, Tom, you wouldn't have to bet on any of these teams to go undefeated other than the rest of the season, other than these 3 games. So yes, Tom, do not go. Tom's theory is you should never bet anybody to go undefeated, even though every now and again teams will go undefeated.
Yes, they will, but you will lose a lot of money betting on teams to go undefeated. And there are enough. Lord knows Michigan doesn't play anyone else that's challenging outside of this group, unless Michigan State does something crazy and pulls off a shocking upset, or maybe Maryland gets them or something like that. But this is really, Ohio State has to go to Notre Dame. Ohio State has to go to Wisconsin. Ohio State has to go to, say it with me, Purdue. What could possibly go wrong? You've got Penn State should win all of its games other than this group, but I think Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State are probably favored. They're probably favorites in all 30 of the other regular season games we're talking about here. But I bet one of them slips up at some point, and this is not 3 teams that are all 11-1 at the end of their regular season.
Yeah, I'm taking the over on that one, but I can definitely see these teams are all good enough to go 11-1 in my opinion. But Penn State at Illinois, 4th game of the season. You mentioned all the Ohio State road games. Michigan, yes, they only have, it's a 2-game season for them, but they could lose both of those. And then there's enough games there for people to lose. Over under 1.5 SEC teams in the playoffs. I don't think Alabama is there. I've kind of been on the side of LSU, but I don't know if they'll have enough wins. Is it just easier to go over? And then if you lose it, you're like, I was just hedging my own bet between my emotion and my brain. So just go ahead and take the over. And if you lose, cool.
This feels like if Georgia wins the SEC championship, this is probably under, because whoever comes out of the West is going to probably have a loss somewhere along the line. So then if Georgia wins, then that team has 2 losses. And then if you have 2 losses, you're kind of functionally out at this point. I think under is probably the smart play here, just because there's a real possibility if you have the 3 11-1 teams coming out of the Big Ten East. I think there's a real argument for the Big Ten East getting 2 teams.
3?
Probably not 3, but I'm sure I can't wait to talk about it this fall and headline some show. Are 3 Big Ten teams going to make the college football playoff? And just have so many misspelled comments in our YouTube channel. Oh man, all caps, so many misspellings. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be, why am I getting so many Grammarly ads right now? Well, have you read our comment section, friends? I think under is the smart move here, because if you have a Pac-12 team that comes out of the Pac-12, 12-1 Pac-12 champion, they're probably making it ahead of an SEC team, a second SEC team, or a second Big Ten East team. If you have a 12-1 Texas coming out of the Big 12, they're probably making it. If you have 12-1 Clemson or Florida State coming out of the ACC, they're probably making it. So odds are, last year was kind of a lot of stuff kind of lining up, and that's what it took to get 2 Big Ten teams in. I think the real question is, if you have a 12-1 big SEC champion, Alabama or LSU or Texas A&M or whoever you want to pull out of the West, and they beat Georgia and they beat Georgia close, and Georgia is 12-1, and it's, oh boy, Georgia didn't play anyone, but we all know how great Georgia is, because we know how great Georgia is, and you can't keep the 2-time defending national champions out of the you have heard people on TV say this for years. You will hear people on TV say this again this year. That, I think, it's a scenario where they get in. If Georgia wins the SEC, I don't think you're going to see 2 SEC teams.
No, I'm with you. There's some playoff parlays that DraftKings had that I liked, in terms of, like, you can get pretty good return on Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and Michigan making it. And that seems like, you know what? You throw a couple dollars on that one and you come out ahead on that one. I'm with you. I'm going to take the under. However, Tom, you got to remember, I mentioned the 11-1s, the 3 Big Ten teams, and obviously one of them will go on to win the Big Ten championship. Remember, the Big Ten is on CBS now, and Gary Danielson will have a whiteboard, and at some point he will be contractually obligated to start talking about the merits of getting 3 Big Ten teams into the college football playoffs. I don't think you've thought about that.
Have you thought about the fact that the CBS college football TV contract this year is split between the SEC and the Big Ten? So Gary Danielson from week to week is going to be arguing with himself about who deserves to get 3 teams in the college football playoff. Can I tell you how excited I am for that?
That's the meme of Skip Bayless arguing with himself, basically. You see those videos. Last one for me. Last one from Fun Magnets. Thank you very much for all of these. 4.5 rushing touchdowns for the Ohio State quarterbacks. I am taking the under. Tom, do you know when the last time an Ohio State quarterback rushed for a touchdown?
The last time an Ohio State quarterback rushed for a touchdown. I'm not remembering C.J. Stroud doing it. Was it Justin Fields? When did I'm going to say Justin Fields was the last one to do it.
Yep, December 5th, 2020, Justin Fields at Michigan State. 2 touchdowns. He had 13 carries for 104 yards that day. Though no touchdown rushes for Kyle McCord or C.J. Stroud or Jack Miller or Quinn Ewers or Jagger LaRoe. Not even on the road.
Was that 2021 or 2020?
2020.
Oh, well, then I'm going to correct you, because I believe C.J. Stroud also had a long touchdown run in that game. So it was C.J. Stroud, right? 2020.
Oh, so he had the last one because he was in later.
Stroud, famously.
Holy cow!
Yeah. So there you go. Wow, that is not the one I would have necessarily pulled out of my head as the last touchdown run. But oh boy, yeah, I'm gonna say over. I think you've got, with Devin Brown being in the quarterback mix, you get one from Kyle McCord somewhere, because he's a little more willing of a runner as well. And the fact that they have two quarterbacks who they feel they can trust at this point, maybe you're a little more willing to have him pull the ball and take, be willing to take a hit here or there. If you feel like you've got two quarterbacks who are very similar in terms of skill set, it's not quite as big of a risk as it would be if you're going from a 10 to a 6. If you're going from a 9.5 to a 9, maybe you're a little more willing to run. So yeah, I think I'll take the over just to be different.
All right, I like it. This has been a tremendous show, Tom. I want to remind everybody to check us out at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We're seeing a bunch of new members signing up, so feel free to join us and say hello to us there. You can find us at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle as well, facebook.com/BuckeyeHuddle, and check out our new sister site, SaturdayGlory.com, looking at the whole picture, the whole world of college football. So find us there, and a bunch of new shows that we're dropping there as well. So give that a look and check it out. And thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.